Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Missanelli podcast. Well, it's a special podcast today because this is round two of an interview with the great Angelo Cataldi. And as you can see in the backdrop here, Angelo has a little different backdrop than we do here. He is in Napa, California, amongst the vines, which is a beautiful thing this morning. Angelo, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. All I've done for 4 days here is drink wine. Oh, my God. They're nuts for wine in Napa Valley. Oh.
Yeah, I've done that trip a couple of times before. I love it. It's such a serene place to be. And first of all, I didn't know you were a wine man, that you would tour the Napa vineyards.
I'm just looking for bargains, Mike. None of the high-end stuff. You know how it works.
Well, there's no bargains when you go to those boutique wineries. I can tell you that right now. But this, Angelo, so this is life now for you. Yeah. Now, I assume that, and we're going to talk about the book and some things we have coming up this weekend together. But are you now taking this time to travel?
This was my first trip so far. Honestly, writing the book took a long time. Getting through the edit took forever. And so we kind of had this planned all along on the back end before the book came out. So we came here, we had another couple, and we're just touring wineries and enjoying the West Coast for a few days. It's really cool.
What wineries have impressed you the most? Because there's so many out there.
We went to a castle yesterday where it was really incredible. And they took you into the catacombs of this castle where they store all the wine. And I mean, it's like, gold out here. These people love this stuff. And you try a $500 bottle of wine. And Mike, I'll be honest with you. It tastes like a $10 bottle of wine. I can't tell the difference. so I'm almost...
You know what? As your palate, as you now start to drink the wines in Napa, your palate will get probably more sophisticated, and you'll be able to tell the difference. Let me recommend a winery out there for you.
Okay.
It's called Hall Vineyards.
Okay.
Hall. It's run by a family, and I'm telling you, they produce a Cabernet that's like gold silk.
Yeah.
It's called Catherine Hall. She's the matriarch of the whole winery. But I highly recommend that.
We'll do. We're looking for stuff. Yeah. That sounds great.
And so when you come back, I'm a part owner of a winery in Cape May, Courthouse, New Jersey.
Oh, I
called
did not
Natali
know.
Vineyard. So when you and Gail get back, I would hope that you would visit our winery as well and have some nice wines.
Well, as long as it's free, Mike, I'll be there.
It's absolutely free. All right, let's talk about the book. And the book is called Loud.
Right.
How a shy nerd came to Philadelphia and turned up the volume in the most passionate sports city in America. First of all, did you get paid by the word in the title?
No, the thing was, I had a different title and they changed it. I had How a Nerd from Rhode Island did that. And they said, no one from Rhode Island reads books. You have to get Philadelphia into a title. So they kind of tweaked it. I go by the one word, loud, because I think it represents my 33 years in radio.
All right, so this is amazing because I talked to you through this whole process, and you said you're going to write a book. You wrote it in lightning speed. And the most amazing thing to me, I think when you're away from writing for a really long time, most people, it would take a while to get back into the swing, but you clicked it on like nothing. So tell me about that whole process.
Well, Mike, it was honestly, that whole process was it was a business decision as much as anything, because I wanted the book out the same year I retired. And I knew that, when the Eagles were eliminated from the Super Bowl, they lost Super Bowl. I had already structured the book. I kind of knew what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And the publisher, I only found one publisher. I went to a lot of different places. I found a publisher in Chicago, Triumph, which was willing to turn it around fast enough. By February every year, most publishing houses know what they're going to publish that year. And they said, we will add you to it, but we need the book in about 2 months. And I was going along so quickly that I went, all right, I'll try to do that. And it wrote itself. When you're writing, Mike, you did it for so many years in the newspaper business before you wrote books. Some of them just write themselves. Others, you got to really, bleed to get it out. But this one just wrote itself, and I had a structure ahead of time, so I just followed that structure. And 6.5, 7 weeks later, the book was done.
It's truly amazing to me. So once you sat down to actually write with a keyboard like the old days. It just flowed out of you.
Yeah.
Boom.
You know what it was like? The stuff, there were chapters where I'm just ripping the people I hated the most in sports in my 33 years. I already kind of knew what I was going to say there, Mike. I said it for 33 years. Gabe Kapler's in the book, right? Funny story. This is the best, all right? So we arrive in San Francisco on Friday. And would you know, the route to take to get to Napa Valley goes right by Safeco Stadium. Now, in my 33 years, the guy I hated the most in Philadelphia sports was Gabe Kapler, because he was super weird and he didn't give a damn about ever bothering to tell the truth. He was just awful. And Mike, I believe, as we were passing Safeco Stadium, Gabe Kapler was inside. Listen, right on the street, in the building that we looked into, Gabe Kapler was being fired. It's a highlight of my life. It's so exciting to know.
After all these years, you did have an influence on getting him canned twice.
He knew I hated him. But Mike, can you imagine if just at that moment he looked out the window and I was lurking out there in the car and he goes, "What the hell's that jerk doing here?" But back to, I mean, a lot of the stuff, Mike, a lot of the stuff that that's in the book is stuff that I said for many years, so it wasn't all that hard to call it back up. The thing that really amazed me, and I hope you write one too, because I know you're a great writer, you got a lot of terrific stories to tell. They have a fact check process, right? And they go through everything that's in the book with a fine-tooth comb. And then they give you an edit. The first edit, even before they go through the words, is the facts. And I was stunned to find out how many things I was repeating over and over again during my 33 years that were not factually accurate. Right? A lot of things that I remembered one way and then I would just keep saying them were not exactly as I thought they were.
Well, you're talking about 1 million stories in your career. That must have been quite an editing process.
Remember, all right, let me test you on this. In 2005 Super Bowl, the Eagles ran against Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Mm-hmm. Remember the long drive where at one point Belichick asked his assistants, "Is that score right? We're up 10 and they're taking all this time in the drive." How long do you think that drive lasted?
How long?
I said 8 minutes. I said it the week after it happened, and then I said it for the next 17 or 18 years. It was 4 minutes and change. And when they said this to me, I went, no, it's 8 minutes. I've been saying it for 20 years.
Yeah, our perception.
They showed me the play sheet. I was wrong.
Yeah, the perception sometimes gets ahead of us. But I remember in the old days, so we were all writers and we all hated the editors that would change our copy and do things like that. How'd you react to that?
They were more delicate in the editing of the words, so it wasn't so big a deal. But I guess it made me mature at a very late age and say that maybe it is important that the editors be there so that I don't screw everything up. But I write stuff off now, Mike, just as senility. I go, well, I'm sure 10 years ago I wouldn't be that stupid.
Yeah, I hear you. We were all rammy back then, thinking that we were the God's gift. First of all, let me announce that Angelo and I will both be appearing this Saturday. This is exciting for me, at the Collingswood Book Festival. So I have a children's book out, and you're going to be displaying your book there as well?
Yeah, I got a session at 1 o'clock there. I'm very honored that they invited both of us to it. And I was really happy about that because I'm going to do a session to talk about the book and hand out sample chapters for it. I don't have the whole book yet. It's still being printed. And then we got a session together, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Yes, we are doing a Q&A at 3 o'clock at the Collingswood Book Festival. So that's a big deal out there. I've never been to it, but I'm excited to be there. So, Angelo, you can see both Angelo and I, if you want to come out to the Collingswood Book Festival this Saturday. My book, I think 11 o'clock is when I'm displaying my book, and you'll be a little later, and I'll just hang out and wait for the for the Q&A. So share some details that you can of the book as a tease here on some of the best stories that you were involved in, because you were involved in a ton of great stories. Which ones floated to the top of your head right away?
Well, they floated to the top of the book because I realized you want to put some of your big stuff out front. So I covered the booing of McNabb at the 1999 draft because that's probably the thing we're most remembered for. So I told the whole story of what happened with those drunk idiots that went there that day and thought Ricky Williams was going to be picked, and he wasn't, and that was kind of awkward. and I told the story of a guy in 1993. I was just trying to do that radio job with Al Morganti and Tony Bruno after Tom Brookshire had left. And we held a 15-hour pregame show. And we were in a tent the whole day. In fact, I'm not sure if you were with us yet, Mike, but
I wasn't there for that one.
It was a sick day. And in the final hour of that tent show, where there was no security like there would be today, and lawyers were not all that interested in what we were doing, some jackass showed up. It was the Cowboys were the opponent on a Monday night game, and he showed up with a blow-up doll dressed as Troy Aikman. Right? You say, all right, well, he's probably going to mangle it or do something to it, and the crowd's going to go nuts because, man, by that point, it's after 8 at night, and these people are tanked. I mean, they are just drunk as drunk could be. And this guy, no one noticed it. I guess it wasn't a big one. He pulls out a chainsaw. Now, those tents the bodies were compressed. It was tight. It was horrible. And he's got a chainsaw, and he's going to decapitate the blow-up doll with Troy Aikman. And that's going to be a big moment in the tent. But clearly he had not thought through what would happen when a chainsaw hit a balloon. And he went for it, the crowd screaming, and it goes to lop off the head. And the minute the chainsaw hits the outside of the doll pops, and the chainsaw goes flying, and it lands on the wrist of his cousin who is holding the doll, right? and it severed. We were told if the thing didn't jam when it hit, it would have completely removed the man's hand from his arm. But in the end,
that's a tragedy, but we're laughing at it because it's so absurd with some of the fan behavior that we've experienced. But I remember that so vividly, that the guy got hurt. And the first thing I wondered is there liability on the station? Are they bankrupt the station here?
I checked on that. I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations, but you're the lawyer, Mike, not me. But
I'm saying at the time, people are so litigious. That's the first thing I thought about. Oh, my God, there's some liability here.
Well,
that we allowed the guy to bring a chainsaw in.
They were drunk. And so now the guy's got blood coming out of his arm. And, rather than rush to the hospital, which you would normally do, he holds his arm up and there's blood rolling down it. And the crowd, you fed blood to this crazed, drunk crowd. It was just so amazing. I'll never forget it because it was the dumbest thing I've ever seen, start to finish. And these guys walked into the building. He had a tourniquet around his arm as he walked in. Here's a limo driver named Dominic Yanni. I actually got to know him a little bit. And it was a badge of honor. It was like, this was the vet. This was the 90s. He almost lost. Mike, that's the drunken, insane behavior that was the 700 level of that era.
Yeah. So he actually went to the game.
Yes, he did not go to the hospital. He went to the game. And then for years after, he brandished the scar as this great thing that had happened.
Oh, my God. Give me an interaction with maybe a player or a coach or a general manager that stuck out to you after all those years.
Oh, I had a lot of bad interactions. I didn't have a lot of good ones. The one that sticks out is the year that I was and in the book, I acknowledge this because one of the things that's on my resume is that I was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in 1986 when I worked at the Inquirer. And I do cover those years also. And I was assigned to cover Buddy Ryan. And Buddy Ryan did nothing every day but lie. He would just come out and say whatever he thought the crowd wanted to hear. And at the midway point in the season, I asked for a week off to do an analysis of how Buddy was doing. At the time, they were 3-5, I think, and none of he had said they were going to win every division game. They hadn't won any, and I did a very journalistic piece analyzing what a horse's ass he was and how wrong he was. And it came out. It got a big reaction, and now I have to go on the Monday to see the coach before, and he has now heard about this thing that I wrote. So it comes a moment when I got to get a question and I got to test the waters. So I don't remember what I asked him. And Mike, it was like I was not there. And as you know, knowing me, a rather large, geeky persona, to ignore me, to act like I was not physically there. And he maintained that for pretty much the entire last half of that season in 1986. And I realized pretty early on that there was not anything that I was going to be missing out on because I was still going all to the regular news conferences. I just never really got to ask a question. But it was so
you never asked a question from that point, or he would just ignore your question?
Occasionally I would to see if he was warming up. I do not recall that he ever warmed up. So I never really got a question in for the last half of that season because he hated me so much. But years later, it's funny how years later you don't seem like as much a threat to these people, and they kind of patch things up. He came on our show a few times after that, and he was actually kind of charming. But back then, it was intense. He was losing. I was trying to hold him accountable. What I never realized, and the reason why I didn't deserve that Pulitzer, and I'm glad I didn't get it, is because, I'm glad I didn't get it too, because then I never would have gone into radio. Yeah, you can't do that if you win a Pulitzer. You got to be a serious journalist your whole life. But the other reason is because he was right and I was wrong. Like, he knew what he was doing. He was manipulating the fan base and getting them more and more excited about his football team. And I was trying to put a damper on that. And as you know, because you experienced it like I did, Mike, that's when Eagle interest went up a level. His 5 years, even though he didn't win any playoff game, he knew how to get people more into the team. And he wins, I lose on that because it took me years to finally realize that what he was doing was great for the city.
Just a couple of piggybacks on that. How did the Inquirer respond to you getting frozen out? Did they think that was going to hamper your coverage?
No, they just said, keep asking questions from time to time. We're very impressed with the journalists we have covering the team.
Oh, that's solid.
Yeah, they thought it was great.
And what that story brings up, I think, the dichotomy between the reporter of our era and even before me, you, and now, because we were just programmed to get the truth no matter if we offended. And it's not like that anymore because now they have control and they freeze you out and they deny you access. But we were programmed in a different way. We had one mission: get the truth, and somebody's lying, expose it. And it was just our training, and that wouldn't fly today.
No. Mike, you're 100% right. People will hear like how, we had kind of like we were alienated from the people we were covering. And we would not hesitate to alienate ourselves further with a question that really annoyed them. I don't see much of that anymore. There's more of a partnership now, but we got into an unusual situation when we were at the WIP still trying to do some of that. And WIP had a business partnership with the Eagles. They were doing the games. So if you did something on the air or you asked the wrong question to somebody on the air, you would get some feedback like your business partner's not happy. And I fought that for a lot. And I'm sure you did too. I know you.
Yeah.
You had something you wanted to
Oh,
get
yeah. I
into. You
mean,
would
Joe
do it.
Banner was a regular
Oh,
caller to the front office of
oh.
WIP.
And he was the worst. You know that. He was just
Yeah.
such a, and he would try to work back channels to get you in trouble. But in the end, I'll say this: the newspaper, to the time I left, they supported me on that kind of approach, and they wanted that kind of approach.
Yeah.
Now I don't think they would. I think it would be a whole different way to go about things.
Yeah. Things have changed. Who was the most intriguing subject that you ever talked to that you where you said, this guy's got it together. He's smart. I admire him. He tells the truth. Did anybody stand out?
Oh God, yeah. And it's current, and it's Jason Kelsey. Jason Kelsey is an extraordinary player in our city because he's great. Number one, he's won a championship, which checks a big box, and he truly connects with the fan base. And I'll tell you, Mike, he tells the truth. You ask him a question, he gives you an answer. They just did this documentary, and I had not even realized that this had happened. But Kelsey last season was he was one of the big forces in their run to the Super Bowl. And there was a week that he had a terrible game. And I came out on the Monday. I didn't even know it. I'm watching with Kelsey, his family, this large contingent of people. And I come on and I go, well, Jason Kelsey proved yesterday, A, he's not good all the time, and B, he was a lousy leader on the field too. And I attacked him last year. And the thing about it was later in the week, he acknowledged it all. He didn't back off one bit. He had a terrible game, and he acknowledged it, and he didn't fight back, try to respin it so it wasn't so bad. He has been, in all these years we've been here, I guess this is his 13th season now, he has been the person you want to hear speak because he'll actually tell you what he experienced and do it with honor and respect. And I don't know anyone who comes close to that in the 33 years. He's the one.
Has there ever been a coach that was like that or close to that?
Yes, Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson, I always feel like he got the worst deal in all the years I was there. There was a time we had Doug on after a game. It was a tie game against Cincinnati. And this, I think, was right after the year after the Super Bowl. And after they won it. And he came out, and I said to him, Doug, there was a fourth down play near midfield with a few seconds left to go. And you punted. That's not Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson's a risk taker. And he stops and he goes, I've been worried. I've been thinking about that all night. And if I had to do it again, I would have gone for it. Now, Al Morganti, our old buddy, and he's sitting across from us. Al was not as committed to athletes or sports figures telling the truth as I was. And Al got this look on his face like, no, don't admit this. Don't show your weakness. Don't do this. And we went to break, and Al said, I can't believe he did that. And I went, you can't believe he did it. He told you the truth. He rethought it. This is news. We have news. This is great. Said, I would never admit to that. I would never. No, you can't show weakness like that when you're a coach. But Doug Peterson for 5 years did nothing but tell us the truth. And he had done it after 14 years of nothing but BS from Andy Reid and Chip Kelly and all his garbage. And he was so refreshing. He was such a nice man. And the fact that he won our only Super Bowl is not the hero that Reid is. Mike, he's not as big a hero in this town as Andy Reid, who was 0 for 14. I don't get it.
Yeah, but people judge Andy Reid on what he's done after he left here instead of what he did here. So let me ask you about Andy Reid. You had to put up with him for a really long time.
I hated it.
So what was your impression that he was a phony?
Oh, the biggest phony I ever dealt with, ever in my life. The biggest phony. He would say he would not answer any questions. He developed a robotic approach to questions. So he would, if they lost the game, I got to do a better job. If they won the game, this guy was great, and this guy Donovan, oh my God, and there was never any illumination to what had happened. There was no reason for him ever to hold a news conference because he was not there to give the fans any information. And then every once in a while, he would stop and do like a tribute to how amazing these fans are. Well, if you respect them that much, how about once a week you answer a question honestly? He didn't do it. You dealt with the same cuts every week as I did, Mike, and it was just a big puddle of bull. And I hated him, and I still can't stand him. And at the very end, when I'm retiring, they're going to get little tributes. And somebody had the lame brain idea to ask Reed, do you know he did it? And he was no more sincere in wishing me well and acknowledging my career than he was in anything else he ever did as the coach of the Eagles. Not once, Mike. He lied to the very end.
You know what's here's the funny part. I've been conditioned over the years to know that everybody in sports lies, and so I snicker at it and I go, okay, it's a lie. You seem to be personally offended by it.
I am.
Where does that come from?
Columbia University. When I got my graduate degree in journalism there, I had an advisor, and I went in there very early on, and I acknowledged to him that my dream was to bring journalism to sports. And he blanched. He hated the idea. He said, you're not coming to Columbia. We're getting managing editors out of here. We're getting foreign correspondents out of here. We're getting best-selling authors out of here. We're not getting people covering stupid sports teams. So he swore me to secrecy, Mike. And he said, you could do this. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it if it's what you really want, but don't ever divulge this to anyone. And make me one promise. If you are going to cover sports with the education we're about to give you at this school, cover sports the way you would if you were covered the White House or you were covered City Hall. Ask hard questions, be journalistic about it, hold them accountable. And I did that. That lesson stuck. And I did that for a lot of the years. We weren't really doing journalism in WIP, but when we were doing an interview, we kind of were. We were trying to get the information out. And I always asked hard questions that way because that was the training of it. But I just, you know what it was? It's like, why are you holding a news conference if you're going to lie? Since you're here and we're here, how about you give the fans some insight into what they just watched?
That's where a columnist comes in. Where a columnist goes, what he just said is bullshit.
Yeah,
exactly. You don't see that anymore. You saw it back in the day. Stan Hochman would do it all the time, but you just don't see that anymore. Here's the question about your preparation for anything, really, whether it was at the Inquirer or radio, has always been impeccable. Now, you just revealed that lesson at Columbia, but there's got to be more than that. There's got to be a drive. Like for me, it was like when I broke in, I'm covered in high school field hockey games, and it's like you just got to got to work through all of this and make your preparation impeccable so people will see it. So where does that drive come from, aside from people telling you how you had to be?
Fear of having to make decisions in the moment. I would not have been a good quarterback calling audibles at the line of scrimmage because I didn't. It's Mike, I'm getting heat out here in Napa Valley this week from my wife because we'll go to a restaurant, but I never pick up the menu. And she goes, what are you doing? And I go, I already checked it out online and I know what I'm ordering. Prep.
That's ridiculous. Really, to be that prepared is ridiculous.
I'm not lying. It's driving her insane. but anyway, but I would always be afraid whenever I did any interview. I would be afraid I'd run out of questions. I'd be afraid in a 4-hour show that I would run out of topics. So I would over prepare every show. I would over prepare every interview. I would constantly. It wasn't done because I wanted to be meticulous about it. It was done because I didn't want to look like an idiot in the moment when suddenly I didn't have something ready and ready to set it out. So, and Brookie, I mean, you and Dick Tom Brookshire, who's a world-class athlete who had his number retired by the Eagles, 25-year and a career as an analyst on CBS. And he would come in at 4 a.m. when we were working together. And he would have reams of topics, and he had a yellow pad with lots of legal pad with all sorts of stuff on it. And he would probably not get to half of it. Tom Brookshire did it. I watched Tom Brookshire do it. I went, if Tom Brookshire is doing that, I better do as much as him and more, because he knows way more than I do. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of where I got to see it in practice in radio, and I followed it.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, we always marveled at your preparation, because I handled it like, okay, I'm going to go in, I have an idea, and I can kind of wing it from here and play with the callers, and that's how I would get through the show. I wasn't nearly as prepared as you were.
Well, you could do it. See, you had a lawyer's background, so you could take any topic and analyze it really well and add a little flavor to it and that kind of thing. I had to kind of write all that stuff down ahead of time.
Let me ask you about this, because I get this question a lot about our careers. And people always say, is that really you? Like, they always want to find out who the real person is. And I've given this a lot of thought. And you know what? When I got out of that booth, I was really more introverted and quiet. And maybe because I just didn't have any words left and I was exhausted. But something about that booth changed me. And so, like, can you put your finger on what that is?
That's a really, Mike, I've been dealing with that since retirement, because what I can see now better than I could in all the years I did it was somehow over time in the early years of doing radio, it was a persona. You created someone who is more interesting than you are, more flamboyant than you are, more humorous than you are. And what happened to me, I'm actually seeing a therapist. I'm seeing Dr. Joe Fish now to work this through, all right? Because over time, when you do something as long as we did, the persona you created and your actual personality start to blend. They start to come together. And you're not sure anymore where one starts and the other ends, and it's very hard to figure out who you really are at that point. But I am totally different than the person I was now. Now more than ever, I am. I'm not good socially at all. I'm awful. I'm highly inept, and yet on the air, I feel like I created a pretty good bond with callers. And how did I do that? Because it wasn't in me. If I went to a wedding, I would go sit in the corner. I wouldn't dance. I wouldn't talk. I wouldn't do anything. And yet on the air, I was very outgoing and that kind of stuff. I guess, Mike, I just think that if you're really committed to your career, you're going to create on the air whatever is most interesting, so that you'll get the good ratings to keep you in your job and you get all the rewards from it. And none of us, we were all newspaper guys who came over to WIP. Were any of us that exciting personalities before we went to radio and had these personas that we created? I don't think so. I think we all had to do it.
I don't know. In that booth, you feel so protected from the outside world that you feel you can say anything, and there are no ramifications for it except if you cross the line. I remember having a fight with David Akers on the air, and people said that was terrible the way they treated him, and I didn't feel any remorse at the time. That is the way I treated him. Like I said, he's fortunate enough to be on my show. I didn't look at it the other way around. And now you look at it and go, well, I guess I was rude there.
Yeah, but see, Mike, the thing is, that wasn't actually Mike Missanelli being rude to him. It was the guy you created for the purposes of an exciting and interesting show. So, I don't
know if people appreciate that, though. They say, well, that's phony. Right? They say, well, that's phony then. If you had to create another character, that's phony.
And I would, and they're accurate with that. But if they really, Mike, you spent a little time with me when I wasn't on the air. I wouldn't have lasted 3 weeks if I had used my own personality. I mean, really? Well, that wouldn't. I mean, I actually did that when we used to do the morning sports page, and it wasn't working out all that well until you got a little more flamboyant, a little more fun, and then you just got into it more. And pretty soon you weren't sure if that wasn't actually who you were.
You know, of all the things that we've done, the Great Sports Debate always stands out to me, and I know that was your creation and Al's creation and Glenn's creation. How was that idea hashed, and how did it come to fruition where we actually got on television to do it?
Yeah, I actually did handle this on the air. In fact, I remember I use a word to describe you because you came right after we started it. And I said, and then we added to our show the telegenic Mike Missanelli. like we looked around and we went, we better get somebody on there who looks good. but the way it started was Glenn Macnow. Glenn Macnow got to meet Rotfeld. A guy named was Rotfeld. He had been doing a lot
Steve
of
Rotfeld,
blooper shows and stuff like that.
Yep.
And Glenn pitched it. And Glenn is a very convincing pitcher. And everybody was looking for sports programming then, and this sports radio format was a couple of years into being, and they decided to give us a shot at it. And I guess because I was doing the morning show, you guys were just jumping over to radio. They made me the host, but I was A, not cut out for TV, and B, I was totally in over my head. And we come for the first show, and it was me and Al and Glenn and Jason Stark, I think, on the first one. And they had me in the front shot. And then the three guys were in the background on the set. And I was like in front of it. And I had to remember 4 teases. The Eagles won on Sunday. What will happen next? Some crap like that. And then there'd be like a sounder in it. And the show was so cheap, we didn't have cue cards, right? So I had to memorize this stuff. But I had just done a 4-hour show and then drove to Exton. A lot of these shows we did in Exton, Pennsylvania. And Mike, I never once could get it right. Just do the 4 lines. I never once. So we finally got through it. And the next week, suddenly, we're all doing one topic from the thing because the host couldn't handle the open of the show.
What about it? But you evolved with that, and this is the dichotomy because you're out now. That's in public. That's performing in front of a camera. That's different than radio. So you adapted to that quite well. So that's the dichotomy with your personality.
Well, I guess I didn't adapt all that well. The show was it had a camp value to it. I think more than any quality. But
we got hired to do a Broadway type of show with it.
I know we did a whole bunch
in a ballroom.
But what I sensed, Mike, was that Jason Stark, who had, I think, overall, he wasn't doing a radio show like we were. I think he realized fairly early on that it wasn't a great career move for him because he was on ESPN. And that's when you moved. You got a lot more. You were on much more after that. And the other thing was you loved to stir up trouble. We had some great blowouts on topics and stuff because
we did.
It was fun. It was like
charm of the show, really.
You know what it was? It was almost like we took the whole WIP primetime package and we put them all together on television for 10 years. And it got a lot. Even to this day, people stop me and say, "Oh, the thing I thought you guys did the best was the morning. Was the TV show." And I go, "Yeah, really." And there is actually
it's amazing. It's amazing how that show resonates with people. That's the reason I brought it up. But I don't know if I talked to you this the first time we talked about, but the show that sticks out is the OJ show. Where we taped the whole show waiting for the verdict.
Yep.
And so because that was going to be the A segment, we taped the rest of the show. We thought sure that it was going to be a guilty verdict, and here it comes out. And I remember you flipping out like I've never seen you flip out before.
Mike, I'll never look at if there's any video of it. Please, I never want to see it because we were doing the show in an auto dealership. And we said, well, the verdict's coming out at this time. Let's do the whole show, and then we'll just tack on the front end of it. And you're right. Every one of us is waiting to see guilty. And when it's not guilty, we can't believe this. And Mike, we were on within a minute, right? They said, well, we got to get this out. We got to do this quick because we had to turn it around and we'd go out on TV that night. And we were, you want raw emotion and anger and frustration, yelling and screaming. I'm positive of all the stupid things I did in all the years of broadcasting. That was probably my worst moment. But but you wanted raw passion. You were mad too, right? You were freaking out.
I think that you were so mad that I said anything I say here would be diluted. So I kind of like let you handle that whole thing, and because your outrage was so visceral that I just stepped back and watched you.
You know what else too, though? You're a lawyer. I mean, you have legal background. You probably
I was looking at it like a lawyer too, with a reasonable doubt and why the verdict would happen like that. And but you had your raw emotion when that was announced.
No, I'm sorry you brought it up. I wish you hadn't brought it up because now I'm going to feel bad about it for a few weeks.
Well, listen, there's a lot of stuff we had to feel bad about in our careers.
You're not kidding. It's
let me close with that. I want to play a little word association game with you, with the people. But first, before I get to that, quickly on the team's outlooks right now, as we go down the line, you get the Phillies starting the playoffs tonight. The Eagles are on another run. It looks pretty good. And then it drops off. So talk to me first about the Phillies.
Phillies, I would be surprised if they have the magic run like they did a year ago. It seemed like that was incredible. And, I think they'll probably be able to get by the first round against Miami, but Atlanta this year is an amazing baseball team. And if they get by Atlanta, God bless them. That would be a hell of a thing. I think Atlanta's where it ends for them. The Eagles are perplexing the heck out of me. Mike, they're 4-0, and I'm watching the fourth quarter of the game against Washington that they somehow won. The last few minutes of that game were coached with no logic whatsoever. And when you have a game in hand, you're running the ball, the other team is running out of timeouts, and you have a great field goal kicker. All you need to do is get yourself in position, take it down to the last few seconds of the game, and kick the field goal and win the game. And Nick Sirianni thought it was brilliant to throw a deep ball to what's his name, number 11, and AJ Brown catches it for a touchdown, and thereby Washington has a minute and a half with a timeout left to come back and beat you with a defense that's been shaky all day. That's stupid, all right? And it makes me think that these coaches are not as good as the talent they're coaching. And then he comes out the next day and he says, I would do it all again. You go, well, that's
a lie.
You think it's a lie?
Here's the thing. I think in that situation, he's coming around for his quarterback. But you're right about the coaching. The quarterback should have been coached not to call a check. Because he called a check and he saw single coverage.
Okay, don't.
So the quarterback has to be coached not to do something like that.
Exactly. And the defense. I mean, how many times does the defense need to make one play and they're not making it? It's like the end of last season. The Eagles are 4-0, but they don't feel like a 4-0 team to me. I don't think they're going to see the Super Bowl this year. The Sixers have a mess on their hands because James Harden, they're somehow feeling that James Harden in some way is going to, whether he comes back or not, he's not going to make him a champion. He's a loser. They keep thinking he's going to do more than he's capable of. Embiid, another year of Embiid's career is about to be thrown away. And I think the Flyers will probably win the Cup this season because my friend Keith Jones is the president now.
That's right.
And I'm rooting hard.
I know we're all crossing our fingers because we all like him.
We all would love to see him win.
Word association.
Yeah.
Jeff Lurie.
Pompous, self-important, but one of the better owners in sports. Just goes to tell you the low bar for owners, right? He's really, when he talks, it's like, that he's handing down tablets. This is gospel. This is gold. But I've never been a big fan. And in the book, I talk about 25-year feud. He's never been on a show since the very first year because he did not like sports radio, especially the way we did it.
Yep. Josh Harris.
Josh Harris is his scoreboard is not the one that's up in the arena or the stadium where he's standing. His scoreboard is his ledger sheet. He is the ultimate hedge fund operator money guy. And if Washington or the Sixers or the Devils or the other entities that he owns in sports think that they've got a guy who's committed to winning, they're not reading it right. He's just about the money.
Jim Fregosi.
The late Jim Fregosi.
Yes.
I just thought, look, we had some of our ugliest moments with Jim, and some of them were my fault, and a lot of them were his fault. Macho Row was his creation because he was this rough, old John Wayne cowboy type of guy. And underneath it all, I found him petty and annoying. And he never did win it here. And that doesn't surprise me.
All right, let's go to a couple of people you work with. First of all, Al Morganti.
Well,
a lot of people don't know what makes him tick. You know better than anybody.
Well, I've been out about 9 months now since I retired. I did encounter him one time at a thing that we did for like a Flyers boot camp with Keith Jones, our old partner. Al is, you'll never meet anyone like him in your life. He genuinely, he never created a persona on the air. That's who he is 100%. He's smarter than all of us. He's smarter than I ever was. He made most of the biggest and most important decisions for our show in all the years that we did it. And there was never a point where he embraced either the careers that we had taken, radio. He never made the full commitment to it that we did. And he never made the full commitment to Philadelphia that we did. He still loves his hometown of Boston. Al was able to do the great job that he did without being 100% in on radio or on all the other stuff. And he still did that. Mike,
he's the ultimate survivor.
When all is said and done, he was probably the smartest, most talented guy. But he had different priorities.
Yeah, he did. All right, I gotta bring this name up just because people want me to bring it up. Probably Howard Eskin.
Howard Eskin. We all have a debt to Howard because Howard really showed how to do sports talk radio in Philadelphia the right way. And that is take no prisoners, et cetera, et cetera. And he did it great. And I know he had a major influence on the way I did the job. I guess where we diverted in our paths was that he got to a point where he wouldn't give you a negative opinion about the Eagles because he had a tight affiliation with them. And the Eagles are the lifeblood of what we did for all those years. And he should have stayed hardcore on everyone and not develop some of the opinions that he did based on the access he was given or the way the teams treated him. See, one of the things I did, Mike, and he thinks it's awful that I did it, I didn't affiliate myself in any way with the teams once I was doing radio because I wanted the freedom to say exactly what I said and not worry about what they would try to do to get me back. I didn't feel that he did that the way that we did. And that's the one
No,
thing I'd say against him. But look, you work with him a lot more than I did.
yeah, well,
I don't
he
know if he
certainly
was a
didn't do that.
team
I mean,
guy.
I was there watching Andy Reid pat him on the head.
Yeah,
And,
I hated that stuff, Mike. That was the stuff with Howard that drove me crazy, because even to this day, he preaches the gospel of the Philadelphia Eagles. If it's a bad season, it doesn't sound so bad when he's doing it. If it's a good season, it sounds like they're all going to the Hall of Fame. But I admire him and respect him. If honestly, more so now than at any point in the time I worked there, because he was the pioneer. He did it first, and he did it damn well for a real long time.
Yeah, I have a psychological analysis on why he is like that, which I will write in my book. When
I hope you write that book, Mike, because I want to go to another book fair.
All right, so Angelo, listen, I appreciate it. People always love when you come on the show. The one we did before was, the people still talk about it, but Angelo and I will be at the Collingswood Book Festival this Saturday. And you'll be at 1:00 with your book. I'll be at 11:00 with my children's book, and I don't know how I wrote a children's book, but I did. And then we'll do a Q&A at 3:00 at the Collingwood Book Festival. So have some more wine, maybe pick a grape and taste it before, so you know what's going on out there, and have fun for the next few days before you come home.
In fact, that Q&A thing, I'm going to do some of the queuing too, and I'm going to say to you, what was the worst moment you had with Howard Eskin? So come out to the Collingswood Book Festival. You worked together for years.
Oh, that's an easy one. That's a story, so I'll be able to tell it.
All right. Well, good, Mike. They got to come out to the book festival on Saturday to hear it. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Angelo, thank you. Enjoy your vacation.
Well, hey, my pleasure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Bye.
All right, Angelo. Bye-bye.